You ever go to Chuck E. Cheese when you were growing up?
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. You remember the little curtains and the cartoon mice used to play music in front of it? This right here, strikingly similar to some of the curtain setting that I used to see on that stage. I'm not saying I got it from there. I'm not saying I didn't get it from there. I'm just saying as we came on air, I kept thinking, I've seen that somewhere. And the way the light reflects off of this curtain really gives me Chuck E. Cheese vibes.
Well, I was going to ask you, how many freaking studios do you have? Because every show you do it's a different background. Like, do you have this mansion, or are you like multiple studios? What's going on?
All right, let me answer those in order. Don't have a mansion. Secondly, the plural of studio is studii. It's not studios. From henceforth. And thirdly, no, I'm just in my kitchen. This just happens to be hanging over here near the wall.
Well, I wish I had that kind of kitchen, but all right, let's chit chat. By the way, I do want to ask you something because, typically I have Billy coming in here with, his workout routine, Bronny coming in here telling me what he's working on. What is the Josh Pate split? What are you on right now?
Okay. You want to mix in 2 legs per week. So my rotation will be a 6-day rotation. I believe in legs, then chest, then arms, then legs again, then back, then shoulder. If you have to rest, which I personally don't ascribe to, but if you have to rest, mix in a rest day. That's why God gave you 7 to fit 6 into. And then you start it all over again. Cardio, you can if you want to. I've never been a big believer in mixing a ton of cardio in, so that's how I go about things. And then, David, you want to eat like 19 meals a day.
So you like it to eat every couple hours, and you're a macronutrient guy for sure, monitoring your fats, your carbs, and your fat and your proteins.
Yeah, but at the same time, man, like eat. Unless you have extremely slow metabolism. I was blessed with fairly fast metabolism, so I don't have to sit there and go down every label and make sure, that's 3% too high on the saturated fat intake. If it tastes good, I'm going to go for it. However, I will, and I can't take full credit for this. Maybe a significant other has entered my life, but over the last couple of years, I have been a lot more conscious of buying the organic stuff. The stuff I used to make fun of my buddies for buying, I actually have begun trafficking in that a lot more. And you actually won't believe this, but I've noted some positive benefits.
100%. By the way, do you hear that in the background? That's the entire audience changing the station as we're talking about fitness as opposed to college football. Sorry about that, guys. All right, let's get into it. So Dallas this week, do you think we're going to get some resolution over the next couple days?
I think we're going to know something about what's going to happen with the 2025 season. I've always taken the stance that I think they should go straight seeding this year. I'll be pleasantly surprised if they do go straight seeding this year. And then the third thing I wonder, David, is like when we're talking like this, do you get the sense that 90+% of the college football public just kind of knows what all that means? We follow it day to day. So I take it for granted that everyone knows what that means. But normal people are out there just living their lives, and it's spring, and they may check in, check out. They're watching a lot of basketball, going on vacation. Like I'm asking because I don't really know. Do you get the sense that everyone just knows what all the possible formats are, and they just know what the criteria is to get new formatting for 2025 and what the power conferences even want the formatting to be?
Well, it's interesting you say that because yesterday I'm with a bunch of dads at soccer practice, and like I just make a nonchalant comment about what's happening, and they all looked at me like, and I look at these guys as people who would know, like, yeah. What? They're talking about doing that? Like, really? Like, I thought they just started this new program, and this is like, so no, I think people who listen to this show regularly and listen to you, of course they are aware, but those that make up the bulk of the viewers that watch the college football playoffs, no, I don't think they actually know the intricacies that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I don't blame that person either, because if I didn't do this for a living, I may not be checked into it as much. But here's the hard part. So if for 10-second explainers for anyone who isn't familiar, a lot of people looked at this past year and they said Arizona State and Boise have buys. That's pretty jacked up. Why don't we just seed this thing with no auto bids to conference champs? Just give the auto bids to the best teams, period. Okay, which sounds commonsensical, right? So the Big Ten and the SEC want to do that for this upcoming year. But it's not that easy. So you have to get 2 steps into it. You have to get into, all right, this is what it is, and this is the common sense rebuttal against that. And then the next layer is, okay, but here's why common sense isn't so easy to achieve. And it's because we circle back around to the same problem we have on 37 fronts in this sport. No one is tasked with looking out for the best interest of college football. It's just a bunch of people looking out for the best interest of their conference. So the Mountain West Conference commissioner could look at the situation rationally and say, yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense that Boise had a first-round bye. However, that same commissioner is going to say in the next sentence, but I'm not going to vote for the common sense approach because that takes away our leverage. That takes away any right we have to have that first-round bye. So I don't know. The only way they're going to get that thing signed off on, which, by the way, for those unfamiliar, takes I think, unanimity, right? It takes every commissioner signing off on the proposal, correct, including many who it wouldn't be in the best interest of. The only way they get that is to either trade on something down the road or they just hold something else over their heads because no one's just doing this for the greater good of the sport at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you. And sometimes I wonder, Josh, and I know there's bylaws and rules, but I wonder, like, why do things, like, we can have a conversation at TexAgs, right? Billy can want to discuss something, and as a group, we figure it out, and we move on the next day, right? Like, we've got our plan. But with college football, it's going to take 7 years to get movement. And I'm not talking about contracts. I'm just talking about, like, hey, guys, we all see that we need guardrails. Let's put some guardrails in, and let's all agree on it. But that is not how college football works, which is why I was surprised that from year one of the college football playoffs to year two, we're seeing, like, Sankey and the crew like, all right, we've got to make changes now.
Yeah, there's a lot of convention that never gets tested, so it just remains convention. There's a lot of language in contracts that just remains impenetrable because no one ever challenges it. So I remember when I was negotiating my previous 2 deals with CBS, not to disclose any particulars, but there were things that I was interested in negotiating with them that my peers would have told me are non-starters. You can't even ask for that, or you can't even broach that, or that's not even within their power to discuss. Well, kind of the blessing for me is I didn't come up the traditional way in this business, so I'm almost ignorant to that. So I just almost have the audacity or gall to mention some things. Well, guess what, David? They were possible all along. And after a little bit, just a little bit of kicking and screaming, not even as much as I thought there would be, you start to have conversations about things that you were told you could never have conversations about. Well, similarly, in college athletics, you just kind of have these accepted norms of you can do this, you can't do that. This is possible, this isn't possible. Well, the thing is, you never really know until you press the issue. And if you're Greg Sankey in the SEC or you're Tony Petitti in the Big Ten, not only should you test that theory, but you can test it with the biggest foot in the room. So when you put that foot on the scale, what's the worst that can happen? It goes the way you thought it would? Like, that's the worst that could happen.
I don't think I asked you this last week, and if I did, we'll make it quick. But how do you feel? Because I have different thoughts in this office, right? I think Billy's all for, if I remember correctly, the 4 auto bids. Is he for? I think he's for. And then Olin's against. I'm for it. Where are you?
It's very weird. It's going to sound hypocritical. In a general sense, I'm against it. Like in a general sense, there's a chunk of me. I think this is where the college football soul is and the heart is over here. So those are the 2 cavities in the chest. I am against any kind of auto bid at my core. But then we're not in a system like that used to be. You remember back in the day when people said, I want to have a 6-team playoff and I want the 5 Power 5 champs and 1 at large. Okay. In that era, that's me just kicking and screaming against that idea because that's stupid. That I want the best teams in, right? Okay, but we're not in that era anymore. So we've expanded to 12, and now we're probably going to go to 14. So you have your regular season losing portions of its meaning, which I want to save at all costs because I care about the regular season more than the playoff. I'm not like most folks. I don't really care about the playoff as much as I do Saturdays in the fall. So I start asking myself, how do I preserve Saturdays in the fall? How do I preserve conference races? How do I maximize the value and the focus on those? To me, David, the only way to do that is the auto bid system or is the automatic qualifier system. Because I look at it now, we got 14 teams in there to begin with. I'm pretty sure any given year, the top 4 SEC and top 4 Big Ten teams are going to be good enough to be considered one of the top 14. And then in the aggregate, if I guarantee those 4 seats at the table for each of those conferences, no one has to focus on the playoff rankings anymore. No one has to focus on whether you're in or you're out. No one's worried about what an athletic director from Stanford on the committee is going to think about your strength of schedule. You're just focused on your league race. And so if you're giving me a playoff I really did not want, I'm trying to get mechanisms baked into it that maximizes what I want in return. And what I want is maximum focus on the Big Ten championship race and the ACC and the SEC, et cetera. And then at that point, I think about what could happen with conference championship Saturday. I think about how you could do away with this foolishness we had this past year. And I'm not knocking him because he had a valid point. When people like Lane Kiffin were saying openly, man, not behind closed doors, openly, they were saying, is there enough to be gained from playing for the SEC championship? Like, do I really want to go there? Because a lot of people were saying that behind the scenes, if anyone's knocking him publicly. You do away with that because you have a maximum reward for finishing first or second. And third, fourth, fifth, and sixth probably have the ability to play their way in, and that conference championship Saturday kind of gets reimagined. So out of the remaining possibilities, selfishly, I got to go with the auto bid. I think that's probably best for business.
What about this idea that I think everybody that I brought it up to hates? You get an auto bid until 3 losses, and anything after 3 losses is, all right, then we'll open it up to a committee.
The reason I have a problem with it is because of an exercise we did the other night. You can just take Oklahoma and Texas in the same league. Just take Oklahoma, Texas. Oklahoma plays. Let me back up. The way I break down strength of schedule personally is I have teams put into 8 tiers, and I have all kind of criteria that determines like what tier you're in. I think we have Oklahoma playing 9 teams in either tier 1 or tier 2 this year. Texas is not even remotely close to that. This past year, Florida played a schedule twice as difficult as Missouri. And David, that's not even to mention how disproportionate the comparative analysis is of Texas A&M's schedule compared to Fresno State's schedule. Yet I'm supposed to pretend we're all playing the same sport. And so as long as there's that much disparity in strength of schedule in this conference, I cannot solely value record. Like the retort to that, I know what it is, well, if wins and losses don't matter, what does? I never said they didn't matter. I'm kind of having an argument with myself now, but I know where the comment section goes on this. I didn't say they don't matter. It's not all or nothing. It's not A or B. What I'm saying is in the NFL, I've always believed you are what your record says you are, because the strength of schedule disparity, even 1 to 32, is very minute compared to what we have in college football, where the strength of schedule, even within conferences, because they're so big, is insane. So I don't know that I could back that one because I don't trust the strength of schedule to be roughly similar any given year.
Why do you think 14 seems to be the number? That's the one that I think Heather Dinich was hinting at, that it could be 14, not 16, because we've heard 12 is going to expand. 16 mathematically probably makes the most sense. But why do you think it's leaning towards 14?
I don't know. I think we were trying to map it out the other day. I think with the 16-team format, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not well read on this part, is that the one where there would be no first-round buys for anyone?
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah. So there may be a group out there. Well, there may be a group that just wants more teams in because that means more money for them. Let's not put it past them. There could be another group that believes it's best if everyone just plays and no first-round buys are baked in. I don't know. I think there are different structures, different formats that they could bake in. So I don't know. I think we're circling around 14, though. It seems like most people are circling around 14. Out of the 2 I looked at, that's the one I preferred more. But who knows, man? I always expect that there's a Ross Dellinger breaking news story coming out of one of these days or one of these meetings where you read it, and unbeknownst to us the whole time, there was this secret format they were working on, and it's only after it's been approved that it gets dumped in your lap, and you're like, out of all these possible scenarios I sketched out on a pizza box or a napkin, I never thought about this one. So I always leave room for that too.
I don't know if I understood it correctly, but I think Dinich also had a thought there could be a play-in game for like 3 and 4. Did you see that report, that there could be like a way to work your way into those last spots?
Yes, of course there will be. I mean, these are the people that brought you such things as let's expand the NCAA basketball tournament from 64 to 72 to 76. I was at dinner last night with someone who's kind of in the room of making decisions on these sorts of things. Now, this person's a college football person, so I'm not talking about this person, but in a general sense, the message was conveyed yet again. It's not going to shock anyone. Not everyone in the rooms making these decisions cares about college athletics, much less has a love for college athletics. And it's ignorant to think otherwise. These are people who are looking at a P&L sheet. These are people counting beans in many cases. These are people who look at college football sort of as this inanimate object that's just another asset under the portfolio, under the umbrella. And we'll kind of do with it whatever we want to maximize revenue because it doesn't really matter. Well, they're half right. It doesn't matter to them, but it very much matters to a lot of us. But to that person, David, they would see the blowback on having a play-in game. They wouldn't even understand it. They're almost taken aback when anyone dares to push back on this sort of thing, because to them it's like, but it makes more money. How could you possibly have an issue with this? It makes us more money.
Sometimes I just wonder, and I think you summed it up well there, Josh, that just where the college football fan versus the business fan, right? And sometimes they're in the same room, and I have a problem with that. I do have a question about USC. Not that I expected to talk USC with you, but I saw a tweet from you, and it made me wonder, typically in college football and in most sports, when you lose it, you lose it, right? Mm-hmm. When you lose it at a particular program, it's hard to get it back. It felt like Lincoln Riley was losing it. Even this year, they beat A&M in the bowl game, I know, but after a couple of years where it felt like he lost it, it seems like he's still recruiting better than he did the last couple of years. How is this possible, considering the feel for that program isn't what it was 3 years ago?
Whole new USC. It's going to take a while, I think, for it to take root. I don't know that you really see it this year, but you may. But what's happening there is twofold, okay? Both of these things ideally would have happened the day Lincoln took the job, but neither did, okay? So the first one is he should have hired the right defensive staff. The defensive staff he has now is excellent, but he didn't. He took his defensive staff with him from Oklahoma. They were bad at Oklahoma. They were bad at USC. Takes him 2 years to hit the dump button on that. Okay, that means you're 2 years into poor development, scheme, recruiting. Your rosters is not worth anything on that side of the ball. So he makes the right move last year, brings DeAnton Lynn from across town at UCLA. Immediately, the numbers shot up. But the thing is, at USC, it's a multi-year rebuild on that side of the ball. So he's already taken care of the moves he needed to make on one side. The other thing was administratively, they did not get ahead of the curve in NIL, which is just mind-boggling, because when you heard the concept of NIL first presented to you, when you heard that the transfer portal was going to be what it is now, and it was first presented to you, you probably thought like I did, man, USC is going to be a runaway freight train. Like, imagine Los Angeles being able to, and they just didn't. Everyone just kind of thought if you say it, it'll come into existence, and it didn't. And only recently have they gone and made the right hires. I mean, hiring that general manager from Notre Dame is a big deal. There are some other names that you probably wouldn't recognize that they've brought in to reinforce the operation behind the scenes, but that's only because they've gotten sign off to do it. And so what you have is you got a couple of aspects, huge aspects, that are just now being put in place that should have been put in place all along, which means you've got a guy that's 4 years in, but we're talking about it like it's year one. We're asking 4 years in now. All right, how long is it going to take Lincoln Riley? Well, if you're not okay with that, you're not okay with that as a USC fan. Like, if you think that's unreasonable, okay. But if you're willing to say, okay, whatever happened in the past, we can't change it. We want to control from this point moving forward everything we can as effectively as we can. It's a good day for you, because I don't think Lincoln Riley forgot how to win. I think a lot of the factors around him in the sport changed. His surroundings changed. I think he was probably wearing 4 hats, 3 of which he didn't need to be wearing as the head coach out there. And now he's been able to take some of them off and put them on the right heads.
Josh, I want to close out with spring game talk, because it's funny how I look at it from a content creator standpoint. I like it. It gives me something to talk about. Hey, I get to go to a game and evaluate this and that. It's a bunch of youngsters. It's not, And then there's a part of me like, does it really mean anything? That's like for the fan, I think it's an awesome experience to go. Sometimes they're free. You can go sit and watch your team and get a close up. So the fan experience I get. from wanting a football program to win, I kind of understand programs going away from it, but just because it's always been done a certain way, how dare they mess with my college football? So what I'm saying is, as a talk show host, I don't have like a definitive take. I kind of get it all around, if that makes any sense.
It's not a crisis. It's not a crisis that I've chosen to, burn a lot of equity on causing an uproar over, but they matter. There's a lot of value in the spring game. Now, there's a difference in what we're talking about here, okay? If I'm talking about Mike Elko's ability to effectively win in the fall, I don't think he needs a spring game for it. You could make the argument it works to his detriment. Like, we could quibble over that. But the bottom line is, no, it doesn't harm them in the fall if they don't have a spring game publicized and televised. However, the thing you said first is the thing a lot of people want to gloss over. You said, I know it's a really good fan experience. Well, that's actually it, okay? There's a reason they put 110,000 in that place. And it's not because it's just a sport. No one watches lacrosse out there to the degree they do football. They watch football because they love football, which means at your very core, you're in the entertainment business. You just happen to be a football coach in the entertainment business. You're running a football program in the entertainment business. And I was listening to some folks in my industry kind of just dispel spring games. And their reasoning was, I don't care if they get canceled. I mean, do we really watch a spring game? I may watch one of them per spring. Well, everybody watches one per spring. They watch their team. And a lot of folks are going to take a family of 4 to College Station to watch a spring game because they can afford the experience in the spring. And they can afford to drive to Tuscaloosa or Athens or Columbia in the spring. They can't afford to do it in the fall. Because they're working low to middle income and they're really struggling. And this is the one thing, spring, kind of an optimism-based climate, and it's warm, and we can go do what we can't do in the fall. Well, now, no, you can't. And it's a shame that if you make the move and you don't replace it with some kind of simulated experience, that you just kind of piss on that entire aspect of fan experience. Well, who cares? We're just here to win football games. You're here to make people happy as you try and win football games. Because if you only do one and sacrifice the former, you find that winning in a vacuum doesn't really matter quite as much. This is not me saying they're going to be playing to a half-empty house at Kyle Field if they cancel a spring game. It's the principle of the matter. Because people who think that way, people who think, oh, who cares what the fans think in the spring, it's not just limited to that. They apply that kind of thinking to whether they charge maximum dollars for tailgate spots that used to be free, what your parking and concessions fees are. All that stuff works downstream of that ideology.
Josh, great stuff, man. Thanks for your time, Bubba. I said Bubba.
Appreciate it, David.
Take care, man.